All right, so we're live. so I'm here today with Cody Weber. He's a writer, poet, musician, photographer, videographer, and social media personality. He describes himself in his book, Seeking Oblivion, as a mixed media artist, and I think I'd never heard that before. I thought that was a good description. He's been interviewed or featured multiple times on MTV and Vice. He published a number of poems in his book, like I had said before, called Seeking Oblivion. And his musical pursuits include Wren, Dearest, and Joy. Welcome, Cody. Please try to fill in where I had gaps. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I think you pretty much nailed it on the head. There's not much to me besides the things you mentioned. I'm a pretty boring person, all things considered.
Well, I don't know about that. You're too hard on yourself. So, yeah, I just, we were just talking right before we clicked play here, just the kind of weirdness of doing a podcast. I originally had kind of thought of the idea, of course, a long while ago, but I thought, well, a ton of people already do that. So, I mean, what am I going to really bring to the table? But that's the wrong mindset, right? Like I should think, what am I going to get out of it? What am I going to get out of it?
I don't think anybody would make anything if that's how they thought about things.
Sure. Well, I've got some questions to ask you. So
hit me with them.
All right. So we're going to start off with the first one. And this one should be pretty good. I'm interested in this one, definitely. So in your opinion, what makes an artist good?
I guess it depends on the medium, really. I think the only thing that's true throughout all of them is sincerity. Like all the artists that I enjoy, anyway, might be technically bad at what they do, but their sincerity kind of outshines their lack of technical prowess.
Sure.
But it's strange because I think my photography's good because I'm technically sound and I know what I'm doing.
Yep.
But when it comes to even my videography, I do everything the wrong way because I taught myself how to do it. And there's so many workarounds that I do that I have to do because I don't know how to do them the right way.
Yeah.
Probably because I'm lazy. and I think writing's the same way. I think sincerity matters more
for sure
than technical prowess, but like I said, it all depends on the medium, really.
Sure. So and this kind of piggybacks on kind of what you're saying, but so art, as you know, can be many things, like you said, it can be either a creative expression intent on evoking emotion, and it can just as easily be an expression of technical prowess, like you're saying. So where would you say that your art, kind of falls in that spectrum?
I don't know if that's really up for me to decide. I think it's kind of up to the person that's viewing it.
Sure.
I know that it's been said that it takes 10,000 hours to become transcendent at something.
Sure.
And when it comes to certain things like writing and photography and stuff like that, I've definitely put my 10,000 hours in and then some. But then other things like the hip hop project that I'm doing now is a fairly new medium, and I'm still really green when it comes to doing it. And I think that's why I have a lot of apprehension on even telling people that I make hip hop music.
Yeah. I don't think you should have apprehension on it, but
well, it's kind of the same way as what you were saying about the podcast, because every musician that I know makes hip hop music now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've actually heard that, but it's kind of weird because I don't know, maybe I'm just in different music circles or something, which I don't get out as much because of the what. I don't want to say the dangerous P word, but right. But anyhow, I kind of feel like I've been building up all of this material, and I'm getting actually pretty close to having a 10-track album, and I'm just have all this material, but I can't do jack shit with it because it's just a really bad time to be a music artist or whatever.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I had this whole idea, like with Dearest, right when the the dreaded P word hit.
Yeah.
I had this big plan to maybe do a little tour. I have probably 30 songs worth of material for Dearest now that I'm just sitting on because I can't promote it or do anything with it.
Sure.
It's kind of like, I think that's something that hasn't really been getting a lot of attention, is how screwed artists are at this point in time. Like, it's ravaged the entire industry in every medium that I at least work in.
Sure. And I don't think that this is touching on any of these other questions here, but that actually brings me to a topic that just got brought up today. And on the show, I try not to say specific names, so I'm just going to say the idea and then we'll see what we can have a discussion on it. So I personally work in my profession in like kind of automation and, the electronic side. And there's been a discussion of essentially like automation is going to be taking people's jobs and society could really give a shit about that. Well, we're already seeing right now people's jobs and their livelihoods are completely screwed. And do you think that anybody is saying that that's moral right now? I mean, I'm just saying, like in your case, you're saying, your main form of expressing yourself, and also on top of that, a lot of your income, if not all, I don't want to presume or anything, but
oh no, it's all of it for sure.
So I'm just saying, like right now, it's not super easy to make that living. So the argument is honestly kind of similar, right? We're already in a case where a society that has its priorities, and we can get into the details of that, but those priorities are not to reduce human suffering. And
right, not at all. And I mean, I think that should be the direction in which we look at it from, but we're not. I mean, and also I think I might be speaking from a biased point of view because of the geographical area in which I live.
Sure.
Because I notice, like, when you branch out a little further, it doesn't seem so insular.
I mean, I'll tell you for sure. Like, if you went out to Cali, you'd be big. I just know that, and I'm not just saying it, dude. I think so. Like, I think that if you got within the right circles, and that's all it takes, is just getting into that right circle, but you're just not, it's going to be a less chance that you find that circle in this area because it's less dense population, and also artists just don't flock to that area necessarily,
I also have such a hard time with that too, because I know that it's probably an imaginary concept that somebody develops an audience completely organically, but the idea of me like seeking out relationships with people just in order to build my own work makes the work feel smaller to me.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
I do know in a way.
I wish I could like hire somebody to take care of all of that for me, so I could just do what I do and not have to feel like I'm being fraudulent.
Yeah.
Because that's my biggest fear is starting to make stuff that I'm not passionate about just for the sake of doing it.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, you're past the experimenting stage. Like, you at this point know what generally you want to make, and it's not a case of, well, I need to just try this so I can get better. I mean, you're already up to speed on all this. It's just,
well, I'm not sure that's necessarily true, but I know what I don't want to do, which I think there's a difference between the two.
I will say, though, and I'm not necessarily saying this about you or anything, like, I'm just saying in general, I have found that artists are kind of stingy, dude. Like, it's kind of hard sometimes to find people unless, like, there's going to be a definitive get something back, like, there's always the case of what are you getting out of it? And, like, in my opinion, like, yeah, I can understand you can get sidetracked on a ton of like goose chases with somebody that has no idea what they're doing. Like, I get that, but
do you think that's more true to artists than just the general public, though? Because I kind of feel that way about anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's true. I will say that maybe it feels a little bit different just because, of course, you know, finding a good artist, you know, no matter what it is, and it doesn't even, we're not talking about like the supreme top artists, like we're not talking about, you know, like Picasso or something there. We're just saying like an artist that is reliable and can reliably finish a project. I think I'll say is not that easy to come by. And
that is true. I don't know if that's selfishness as much as I think artists tend to be people that get in their own way anyway.
Sure. Yeah, I guess that's true.
At least in my experience, I can't make blanket statements about every single artist, but
yeah, fair enough. So in your book, Seeking Oblivion, in a poem entitled One Way Road, you write, "Writing is a one-way kind of road. At least it is, for me, it is the following. One man's suffering," and I think that was supposed to be man's, excuse me. "One man's suffering, one man's room, one man's hell. One person alone at the helm, and no pets, no friends, no family. Allowed beyond that thin chalk line. I've locked myself away and swallowed the key, the only key, so please quit wasting your time with all that kindness." So did you write this with the intent of expressing an emotion or evoking one, or both?
Both, I think. The poem was about my experience as an introvert and like how talking to people kind of drains me.
Mm-hmm.
I find that I require very little to be satisfied, and I think most people seem to take issue with that. If I remember correctly, I wrote that poem after a conversation with my mom because she mentioned I used to have so much more than I did at the point of our talk. And me trying to explain to her that the less I had and the less I needed, the better I felt, seemed kind of like a foreign concept to her. And I noticed that we both judged one another accordingly.
That's interesting.
And I think personally, I felt bad that like she needed more than a pencil and a piece of paper to feel satisfied with life. And I felt bad that she thought that I needed more than that too. I think that's kind of strange how it works.
Yeah. So there's a lot of just, I've read not full works in a lot of cases, but a number of philosophers over the past couple years, just out of curiosity. And I've noticed that kind of trend in some people is, you know, there's the human condition is, as we found in many things, like, of course, sexuality, and it's a spectrum, you know, there's not like a particular, you know, this type of person, and then you can just say that over and over and over again as a cliche in a lot of cases, because there really is, you know, a pretty broad spectrum of the type of people. And one of them, I would say, or a spectrum that I think should be measured is, I would say, like fulfillment. You know, for a lot of different philosophers over the years and over the centuries, it seems like their fulfillment to other people seems like they don't do anything, and they're just kind of sitting around and doing essentially jack shit.
Right.
And that's not the case. You know, they're just people that are able to use their mind in ways that other people just find to be foreign.
Well, I think we need to redefine what it means to work, because I think that a lot of it boils down to whether or not people think that you're utilizing your time and being of service to humanity or whatever, you know?
Sure.
But as time has went on, like the transaction used to be a very simple one. If you liked somebody, you bought their stuff, or you went to their shows, or, you know, there was a very clear line on how to support artists and prove to the world that art is a job or whatever. But it's gotten to a point now where you can literally get anything you want for free, basically, or pay some conglomerate to get an insane amount of things for free. That I think it's kind of devalued the concept of art as a profession,
right? And
has turned it into more of like this is something that anybody can do, because there's never been more art available.
Yeah, and so one example of, I guess, value, and it's an old story. It's been told for thousands of years, and it's a story about Diogenes. It's an old philosopher, and this guy was like, to everybody that lived during his time, he was the lowest of the low. Like, he literally walked around naked, didn't have hardly any possessions, and like, he lived wherever he managed to get to, essentially. But the thing is he was a really, really, really good philosopher. Like, he would go up and, so Socrates, the famous Socrates, he would go and he would essentially heckle him during his, because back then, the campus was an open campus. You could just walk up and listen to Socrates teach all day. And then, So anyway, long story short, his personality got around and it became so famous that Alexander the Great heard about him. And he found him to be kind of intriguing. It's like, this person feels as though he has this much self-worth, and he has essentially nothing. And it was perplexing to essentially the most powerful person in the world, obviously. So he eventually found Diogenes, and he walked up. I'm sure his guards tracked him down and said, "Hey, he's over here," and he's laying on the ground, sunbathing. And Alexander the Great walks up and he said, "Diogenes, I've heard of your deeds, and I really, really, I'm glad to meet you." And he said, "And I'm so impressed by all of the knowledge that you have. I want to grant you one wish, and it could be I can do literally anything for you. It can be anything, and I will make it happen." And Diogenes, he kind of just looks up at him and he says, "Okay, I need you to move about 3 steps off to the left." And he was like, "Okay, why?" And he said, "Because you're in my sun." And then he, of course, started laughing, and he said, "You know what? If I wasn't Alexander the Great, I think I'd want to be Diogenes." And Diogenes said, "You know what? If I was Alexander the Great, I think I'd want to be Diogenes too." And the thing that's really cool about that story is that even Alexander the Great, the most powerful man in the world, has conquered more land than hardly most conquerors have ever conquered in history. But yet he still saw a great value in Diogenes, who had nothing and pretty much laid around and fucking, pissed in the dirt and had no clothes. And I'm just saying, like, obviously artists are way better than Diogenes. I'm not saying artists are that, but I'm saying every single person has a value in society. And to say that because they don't work at a fucking factory or some arbitrary mundane job that they're not beneficial to society is a crock of shit. And
it's definitely been like a real point of contention in my life the last couple years or so, because I spent a long time like grinding and doing things the traditional way. And if you ask anyone that was close to me back then, they'll always say the same shit about how I was doing so well for myself, and they wish I could get back to that point in my life. And that was probably the most miserable I can possibly imagine myself being, was just gathering all this shit just because I could, and then wasting all of my time doing stuff that did not fulfill me in any way at all. I was happier, and I am happier in a studio apartment with I barely have any room to move around, but I have time to do what I want to do, than I was in a 3-bedroom house where I was working 80, 90 hours a week. Yep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that, that's the form of enlightenment that I'm trying to get to, is not caring that people don't view that accordingly.
Yeah. And I mean,
because some people just aren't ever going to, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's just some people that aren't willing to, and I'm serious, like I really think that they have the capability. I'm not saying they're necessarily stupid, but they just are willfully ignorant. Like, they refuse to learn anything beyond what their preconceived notions are.
Well, see, but see, that's the thing though, is I don't think calling it, like, I don't think it's a point of ignorance or even willful ignorance. Because I have an equally difficult amount of time understanding how they live their lives. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same kind of concept, just in reverse.
Yeah, I think that indoctrination
I
is a powerful tool. That's all I'll say.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And I think that our society, even how societies are taught, like this is a huge can of worms, and I don't know that I want to go down this rabbit hole necessarily, but just think of, so like my parents grew up watching Bewitched and I Love Lucy, and I'm just saying, like, sure, there's more examples than that, but those were like propaganda machines. Like all of the media that was fed to them, and it was, the only thing they had, essentially. Even like perfect example is like before even television, radio broadcasts. I mean, the Red Scare literally happened because of radio propaganda. And
yeah, I mean, it's a powerful tool.
Yeah, I just think that there's a lot of people that if you say, well, do you know what? I just want to minimize human suffering, and they'll just immediately just be like, get out of here, you fucking Marxist. It's like, what the hell, dude? I'm just talking about...
I think it's also the whole idea of like the American dream is so rooted in just buying shit anyway. So it's such an affront to like what they believe the human standard should be.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to judge it because, they might have even risked their lives in the name of something that the person they're talking to finds no value in. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't think I found a whole lot of value in fighting in Iraq, honestly.
Right. And I know you did, but I know there's a lot of people that
they think that was valuable. I don't. I mean, I went there, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad I served. I think that, public service is kind of like a good thing for people to do. But I just feel like the cause that they were specifically trying to go for there was kind of bullshit and a big waste of money and time, and also human lives. I mean, for sure. Luckily enough for me, I didn't have to deal with any of the nasty stuff.
Yeah, and thank God for that.
So let's move on to some further questions here. So, what artists would you say have had the most influence in how you approach your work?
Oof. Shit. That's a hard one, man, because
we've got time.
even artists, I would say sometimes artists that I don't like affect my work more than artists that I do, and influence me more because I view them as a blueprint of what I don't want to do. Sure. But at the, trying to stay relatively positive. Let me think about who's had the biggest positive influence on my work. Lately, I would say the lead singer of a band called Every Time I Die, named Keith Buckley. I think his lyricism is next level, and I find that when I write lyrics for Joy, especially, I'm always comparing the standard of which I'm writing to something that he's doing or has done that I'm like, this is fire, Okay.
That's cool. But I've heard of that band, but I haven't listened to a lot of their stuff.
You should check them out. They're seriously next level good. And they're like a lot of bands, when you listen to them, maybe you don't do this, but I kind of go out of my way to not read their lyrics a lot of the time because it kind of lessens it for me, especially if they're, like boring cliches piled on top of one another. Yeah. But if you listen to Every Time I Die stuff and then read Buckley's lyrics while you're listening to it, it's like a transcendental experience almost. And I know that's pretentious as hell, but it's also very true. Cool. But aside from him, I was introduced to Nirvana when I was like a depressed 10 or 11-year-old, and everyone around me was listening to Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and this like really positive music, and I had never been exposed to anything else. The only other kind of music I was exposed to was the stuff my dad listened to, which was 80s glam metal, which was just about fucking girls, which I also had no experience with. But then I discovered a Nirvana record at a disc jockey in town, and I bought it because I thought the album cover looked cool, and the whole album was just this introspective record about him not belonging and feeling alienated and weird.
Yeah.
It really struck something in me because I realized that everything I had been making up until that point in my life was me trying to fit in with everybody else, and there was this outsider music that became the mainstream thing. And it was also kind of a way to stick a middle finger to my dad because Nirvana kind of killed his favorite genre of music. So yeah, Cobain. There's a comedian named Bill Hicks. He was another one of them that I accidentally downloaded one of his skits on Kazaa when I was a kid and completely changed my way of thinking. Some of his stuff I think I've grown to think was kind of too conspiracy based for me, but again, his passion,
a little wacky.
Yeah. But his passion and his sincerity, even now, it's almost like you're not listening to a comedian. It's like you're listening to somebody's soul or something. And my favorite writer is Charles Bukowski. Jack Conte, the founder of Patreon, he invented this thing called the video song, where he made music videos but showed you every instrument as they were being recorded. And up until that point, I didn't even know that you could record things on your own. I thought you had to go to a studio to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And that's when I started doing it myself. Bill Watterson, the creator of Calvin and Hobbes, that was my favorite comic as a kid. Ika Swoboda from I'm Astronaut. He's also my bandmate in Joy. I just find that dude to be intriguing as hell because we have literally the exact opposite perspective on existence. And most of our conversations aren't even about music or art or philosophy. Well, I guess philosophy would entail it, but it's all about like what is the process of being human and what does it mean.
Sure. So and like mindfulness or
just like what is inside of a human that makes them an individual thing.
Sure.
As opposed to just like being another cog in the machine. And we never agree ever, but it's fun conversation every time. That's
cool. So a lot of artists there. That's probably a lot for the audience to chew on. So we've already kind of touched on this, but I guess to officially ask, so you already say that society in its structure really doesn't adequately appreciate artists. So I guess to rephrase the question that I originally had, I mean, how so? Like how specifically, or maybe do you have like any thoughts or solutions, to try to make it so that artists are just better appreciated?
I mean, I don't know if I have any solutions, but I definitely have some personal experience. I've had to claw and dig for every single dollar I've ever earned when it comes to art, and I've had to spend thousands of dollars and hours of my own time and money just to get to the point that I could do work for other people. And then some of the same people that pay me for my work will later tell me on Facebook or something that what I've invested an entire life into isn't a real job. It's like, how can you say, like, you paid me to do this? How can you tell me it's not a real job? And I'd like to say that it doesn't bother me, but it really does from time to time. Like nobody likes to hear that their work isn't important. And I feel like I hear it a lot.
Sure. So, I mean, the thing that I would just say on some of that is just, granted, I mean, when it comes to the technical side of any job, I mean, being an engineer is probably one of the top. And
oh, for sure.
I'm just saying, like, being an engineer, like, I can actually speak from a position right here. I mean, I think that you can also speak from a position, but to all the naysayers out there, it's like, look, guys, I'm an electrical engineer. I have a right by all means to speak on this subject. People who go do business degrees aren't necessarily providing any more for society than what an artist does. Sorry. The only thing they're doing.
I would argue in some cases they don't provide as much sometimes.
I mean, in my experience, in many cases, they don't provide jack shit, but that's besides the point. I'm serious. Like, I've had more managers in my professional career that literally gave nothing to the team. Like, and it's not that they didn't try. It's just they literally made everybody's job more difficult, and for really no gain for anybody but themselves. And and I'm just saying that, sure, there are, people that are really good at their job and are probably great managers, and I've had great managers. And I've even, seen a number of cases where people that get business degrees go out to do really great things. And it's not saying that. I'm just saying, in comparison, people with certain degrees or professions don't have like a high horse to be standing on, because in every single one of those areas, they're still worthless motherfuckers. I mean, I'm serious. Even as an engineer, I've met plenty of other engineers in my life. They're nice people, and I get along with them in that. And luckily, I don't know that this is the case in my current job, but they're just worthless. Like, they literally don't bring anything to the team, and they're just getting paid sometimes six figures, to essentially have other people do their job and not bring anything to the table. So,
well, I think that's kind of how it goes a lot of the time. Like, the higher up the pole you go, the more worthless the person getting the money becomes. And it's a strange paradox that I can't quite understand. Right.
But I mean, people say that, well, they're incurring risk, right? So like in my job, the reason I get paid is because, one, for knowledge. I have a number of years of electrical knowledge, and I can just pull that from anywhere and don't have to look things up a lot of times because I just know. But then the other piece of it is I'm responsible for I think $38 million worth of equipment that could go down at any given time. And if I install something that's not right and I ruin that equipment, ultimately the buck stops with me.
Right.
So,
and dude, honestly, that's a kind of pressure that I can't even fathom.
And a lot of people can't, and that's why people choose different professions. That's the point. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with you.
Even when I the corporate stuff that I've done, there were times where a company would spend tens of thousands of dollars to send me somewhere to do a shoot, and they would have to hire models and lighters, and they'd have to buy equipment or rent equipment for me to use, and then pay for motels for all of us. And if I messed up the shoot, that was on me. There's no do-overs.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I think that might have been part of the reason I was so miserable in the first place. Is that amount of pressure is just not something that my personality type handles well.
I mean, one reason I'm working towards getting out of, the working for a corporation thing is just, and I don't know that it's going to be, anytime necessarily soon, but point is that I really get a little burnout on the whole politics side of jobs. Like, if there's a bunch of people that are being, a pain in the ass and just not being helpful or whatever, I just don't deal with that. It's like, I'm not going to work, to go over and sit by the coffee pot and, do a bunch of gossip and, listen to everything that's going on in the shop or something like that. Right. I'm there to go do some work and get the fuck out of there. If I can do that and talk to literally nobody, I'll do it. I would rather just do everything my own, rely on myself. And if I need somebody from the team, granted, it's nice to have reliable people, but I just work way better by myself. And really, corporate atmosphere doesn't support that very well. They want you to sing Kumbaya and hold hands, and I'm all for that, I guess. It does make a positive for a positive workplace, but I also kind of get a little burnout on it.
I think that they probably even have ulterior motives for the reasons why they want you to be all Kumbaya anyway.
that's like a whole entire area of mindfulness and meditation is just like overwhelming everything with positivity so that everything that happens in your life will be more positive.
Right. But man, I think that like forced positivity thing is a dangerous thing
It's
too.
fucking neurotic is what it is.
Like it's just an impossible standard to live up to.
Yeah.
Like some things just aren't positive, man, and it's okay.
All right, Cody, there's not enough flair on your sweater right now. You're going to have to look at Jim. He's got a lot of flair. All right. So next question. If someone said to you, I have 1 million friends on Facebook, to throw out a number, if you do this job for me, I'll pay you an exposure. What would your response be to that?
Well, I think if a person asked me, like an individual, my response would be different than if, say, a company or a conglomerate did. Because I don't have to sell my soul to satisfy an individual. Like, we can have conversations and we can make compromises to achieve a vision that works for both of us.
Sure.
But every company I've ever worked for, 100% of the time, always ends up becoming so plastic and rigid. Mm-hmm. Like there's very specific rules and guidelines to follow, and frankly it stresses me the fuck out. Like I would work for exposure with an individual and I wouldn't for a corporation.
Okay.
I think I have an inherent bias working for somebody trying to sell people shit they don't need.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like even the worst individual, if what they're selling is themselves, they're still selling something that is more valuable than a fucking iPhone or a coat or something.
Yeah, that makes sense. So moving on to music, it looks like these are just a big mishmash here. So we'll just go with music here. So what's your top frustration with the music industry?
Probably that it's even an industry. Like the people making the rules probably have never made a G chord with their fingers. You know what I mean?
That's one thing. I think it was I can't remember. I want to say it was Howard Stern that said this, but and I'm not saying I agree with everything he says, but the point he said that music isn't the way that it was because like the old motherfuckers back in like the 70s and shit that were the big record labels, the old farts essentially that were not really music guys, but they, were the investors. A lot of times they'd take a chance on some shit, like they'd go over and they'd be like, okay, well, we're going to take this crowd of people from the street and pay them $10 for their time. And then we're going to have this band play and we're going to watch them and see if they like it. Right. And then if they like it, okay, well, we're going to spend money on this person, like they would give a chance for somebody if they're entertaining.
Now everybody knows what the formula is. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I think there's a reason that everybody knows who Macklemore is and nobody knows who Idea is. And it's because of that, like the risk's not being taken anymore.
Yeah.
Like these people have taken something that I find to be paramount and they've reduced it and raped it to bits. And I don't want it to sound like a wrong generation type of sentiment. I just think music should be an escape. No, it shouldn't be that.
I mean,
music is an escape from thought today, and it's not an entryway to it, as I think it should be.
Yeah, so like I like how you say that, because how often have you gone? Just trying to think. I guess it's been kind of that way for a long time, but it seems like music like that is kind of becoming almost the norm rather than, so like disco, for example. What is disco there for? It's mainly just to dance. Like I'm not getting some like insane epiphany from disco lyrics or anything like that.
I think that's why like metal kids and punk kids took such offense to it. Was because there wasn't any substance in it,
Yeah, that makes sense. So what is your opinion on YouTube?
I guess it's kind of a love-hate relationship. Like in my personal experience, myself included, YouTubers can tend to be the worst people on the planet. You know, we have that childlike mentality that we need to be seen and heard.
Yeah.
And most of us aren't making anything that really matters. It's just ridiculous bullshit to fill the void and appease the algorithms.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of something that I especially don't like about the algorithm in general, is that they're only really gauging it based upon popularity. But I mean,
yeah, I mean, and there's a lot of other like oddly specific things that don't make sense to me. Like, I don't know if you've noticed this, but up until like 2012, the formula to a successful YouTube video was making something that was under 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
And now the name of the game is length. That's why podcasts do so well on YouTube, because the longer your videos are, the more ads they can shove in them, and the more ads they can shove in them, the more people they're going to put it to, so they make more money. It's this vacuum of absurd nonsense, you know?
Yeah, I actually didn't even, I guess so everybody knows, I didn't make a podcast just so I could be found on YouTube, but I didn't even realize that, but makes sense.
I just realized as I said that I decided at the beginning of this year that I was going to give the whole YouTube thing a real shot.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to try to make regular content for a year, and most of my videos are over 10 minutes long, just because I know that fact about the algorithm.
Yeah.
And half the time, it's like half of the video is something I'm really proud of, and the other half is just stuff that I think is kind of okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'm still doing the same thing I was doing before. I'm still selling my soul a little bit. I guess you kind of have to come to a compromise.
Yeah. Except this time it's dictated. Well, I guess the people are the ones pulling the strings, so they're the ones dictating it.
And it's still on my terms, so I guess it's better than it being on somebody else's. But
sure.
I think my problem is everything that I make is the void that I'm trying to fill is my own. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to fill a void outward. It's the one inside. Sure.
And that's what I'm doing it for, is I really admire like especially Sam Harris for what he's doing. I know that he got caught up in some controversy multiple times, but the one that was most realized for me was he had this gentleman by the name of Charles Murray on his podcast. And there's this big uproar, which I'm sure you've heard of Ezra Klein.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen Ezra Klein on 2 podcasts now, 2 completely opposite podcasts. I've seen him on Sam Harris's podcast where he got pissed off about, and I don't want to get sidetracked here. I'll try to wrap this up. But anyway, so he went on Sam Harris's podcast because of Charles Murray being on his podcast talking about cancel culture. And he was like, well, you're essentially like dog whistling white supremacy or whatever, because Charles Murray was the scientist involved in, or a scientist involved in the bell curve.
Right. But man, I think drawing those lines is bullshit anyway.
Yeah.
Like you gotta let everyone have a piece of the pie. You can't just say because you've done this or because somebody you respected did this that you shouldn't have an opinion on the subject. That's so nonsensical to me, and it turns everything into this like echo chamber of like where's discussion to be had if everybody thinks the same exact way.
I mean, since we're already on the subject, I had censorship of content on YouTube. So like this is one thing that really, you know what grinds my fucking gears? It's this fucking bullshit of like copyright on YouTube, dude. Like it just doesn't make a fucking bit of fucking sense. So like if I want to say, and I'm not going to necessarily do this, but like if I want to have a react video on Saturnine Films, your fucking, YouTube channel, and I have a video, or you have a video on there and I want to do a react of it, I can't just start to finish have me with a camera on me like I have right now and just fucking react to the video because it's going to block me on some stupid content bullshit. And
all the money that you would make on that video is going to be funneled to me because I can claim that the work you put in was actually my work.
And I can maybe in a React video case, I can understand that, but like
I can't even with that, man. Like, okay,
I mean, that's fair.
It's for anybody, a React video is literally nothing but a promotion.
And that's where that's exactly where I'm getting at, I guess, is that the person on the React side isn't necessarily putting a lot of work into making the content. So that's what I was talking about. But the other side, like you're saying, why the fuck would you turn that down of me reacting to a video? I'm going to be a person that will potentially, if I'm trying to go into the system, right? Like I've drank the fucking YouTube Kool-Aid and I'm like, hey, I just want to be as successful as possible on YouTube. I mean, it just makes sense. If other people are reacting to your stuff, then that's more ways that your stuff's getting into YouTube and gives you more exposure. Exactly. So it doesn't make any sense. And like in my case, it was for my other channel, the Squeeze Box, which, I mean, we've done work on that before, which I've kind of changed it a little bit. But so I did a React video on Stew, the fucking SNL skit. It was a Christmas skit where essentially it's in the Eminem song or whatever. Yeah. So I just don't understand why NBC Studios would give a flying fuck that I'm sitting there watching their stuff. I even put on there at the very bottom of the clip when I first uploaded it, property of NBC Studios, because I try to look it up. And they'll block it. They literally blocked it. It wasn't a case like they stole my monetization. I could honestly really care less about that. Like I just wanted to have a fun video, but they blocked it. And it's like, what the fuck?
I think a lot of companies are kind of turning the other cheek when it comes to that, because that same kind of thing used to happen to me until greedy corporate fat cats realized that they could actually make money on other people's work and not have to do anything. And I find that these days it's a lot easier to slip through that system. Like you won't be able to make money on it, and they might not advertise the video because of that. But then again, they might advertise it more because, ABC or whatever, NBC is going to make money from it.
Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how that works.
Well, here's another thing. So like I did a review video. Like I said, all of these aren't necessarily to just like become fucking PewDiePie or something and make, insane money on YouTube. I'm just doing it so that I can have an activity to do with my friends, and if something happens with it, great. But the point being is like I made a 40-some minute long video of The Lighthouse, the movie. It's like 2019. It's got Robert Dafoe in it. Or wait a minute, William Dafoe, excuse me. And Robert Pattinson. And we did a long ass video with one of my friends where we reviewed it. We talked about a lot of different things, and I had 3 clips in there, all of which were less than 20 seconds long. And no shit, they blocked the entire fucking video. Not just muted out.
What?
They blocked the entire video for less than 2 minutes of fucking footage because I was stealing from some production company or something like that. And it's just really, guys,
that's crazy.
What the fuck? Why are you going to block a 45 fucking minute video for 2 minutes of shit? It's insane. And it doesn't make any sense because, like, it's not like we gave the movie a bad review. We gave it a fucking 90-some% out of 100.
I think it would help if there were like clearly designated rules that you had to follow, but there's not. Everyone's just guessing constantly.
So I already have a solution for it that would be fucking simple and wouldn't even require them that much software time. Just literally on the video, if I know there's other content in there as the content creator, I check a box that says, yes, some of the content in this is somebody else's. And then I can put a link in there to whatever the video was, or a credit to whoever the fuck it was. And it can be in the system itself, where it just says, this is literally like whether it's in the description or on the right below the title of video, or if they put an overlay over top of it. I mean, an AI can put an overlay over shit, but right. I'm just saying, like, that is so much easier.
I actually just had a thought. Piggybacking on I think you said Howard Stern when he said the thing about how back in the day the old farts would take a chance on somebody and see what happened.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the inverse of that now, because now the old people that don't understand new media are refusing to take any chances based on their experience in the old media.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just trying to leech off of people mainly, and that's where it just gets really bad. But so this kind of goes into that other conversation. So I have an opinion that art is best realized when it's for art's sake and not when it's used as a commodity cash cow to push profits. So my reason for this isn't to stifle art or to suggest that artists shouldn't be compensated for their work, but to promote art that is presented as a genuine article of expression versus art that is presented to maximize profits. So given that, you already touched on this a little bit, but do we share the same opinion on kind of how art should be expressed in society and gives it the most value?
I definitely think we do, but I also have a hard time on even understanding how art should be expressed in society as a whole, because to some people, like, take for instance, I used to live with these people. I ran a company with them, and we would go on these long cross-country road trips, and they wouldn't turn the radio on one time. They said that they saw no value in music at all.
Okay.
And to me, that is so far left of anything I can think of.
Just imagine watching Footloose and just not getting it.
Exactly.
Just, what? I don't get it. Sorry, go ahead.
I think when you put the words art and society in the same sentence, they kind of act as opposing things, because art is such a subjective experience anyway.
Sure.
So I think to some people it's always going to be about the amount of capital return you get based upon the investment of your own capital and your own time. Well, and then with other people, I think that none of it matters at all. It's just you do it because you have a love for it and an appreciation for what came before you, and you want to emulate your idols or whatever.
So, like, the thing that I'll say, well, I mean, at least for visual art, I don't know that it doesn't really apply as much to, like, music, and I don't know about writing, but so, like, for visual art drives design, and then design drives art, and then, like, so I'm just saying that if you think about it in, like, kind of if I was trying to, put a list of things together for, the pros versus the cons of, like, an artist in a society. So, like, a lot of people would say the cons is, like, just for a simple example, is like they're not, going out and, I don't know, building a road. So it's something that I can't physically see. But one thing that they are doing is they're influencing the people that do build the roads and do build the buildings. And
okay, yeah.
And, like, if you don't have a good art center, so, like, for example, I guess in the case of music, music also influences people. I mean, when I do any work, I'm always listening to music because I can think better. It allows my mind to, expand and, kind of take distractions away. And I'm just saying that there's all of these ways that you could imagine, and you can just keep building this list of all of the ways that art influences a society, and people don't think of that and then assign value to it. But the value's there.
To be honest with you, until you said that, I really hadn't either. I never really viewed it like that.
Cool.
That's interesting. Kind of expanded my own mind there.
Well, if you think about it, like Da Vinci, he not only was a painter, but he also influenced quite a bit of architecture as well. And that's something that we can, of course we can see his paintings, obviously, but I'm saying like, that's like a tangible thing that other people are just like, damn, Da Vinci, you got some fine looking fucking cathedral there, or, whatever it was. Well, I want to build something like that. That's exactly how they spoke in, 1400s or wherever he lived. But damn.
I fucking love that cathedral, bro.
So, do you think that specifically creating art, and we're talking about all the things we talk about, so like writing, movies, TV show, photography, for the sake of profit, do you think that that specifically negatively affects the industry? Or do you think it's kind of like something that can live in unison with the artsy for the sake of artsy side?
I guess it depends on what your motives are to be making what you're making to begin with. Like, I do believe that if you consider yourself like an artist first, then any kind of shit that you make for somebody else to sell something makes you suspect. It kind of
looking a little sus.
Yeah. But I don't think it's an inherently negative thing, because, to be honest with you, the people that are making stuff purely for profit are probably the only ones that are keeping it an industry to begin with.
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of the paradox then? We must destroy them and then no longer have the industry.
Yeah.
No, I actually, after I made this, of course, I mean, I just thought of a way that you could positively affect, well, I don't know about the industry necessarily, but society, by making art for the sake of profit, is if you did it for like some sort of a, humanitarian effort. What was that?
I was thinking the same thing.
What was that? That famous Freddie Mercury performance or whatever that Queen did that was like that? It was seen all the way around the world and people joined hands or whatever.
Live Aid?
Yeah, I think it. So that, I would say, if that's what they're trying to do is like profit and then give the money away, I guess that I can be for that. But I guess
at that point, like the thing is, at that point, Queen was already rich. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I guess that's true. So they weren't.
It wasn't much for them to give a free live concert when they'd already made millions and millions of dollars.
Sure.
That also doesn't mean that doesn't negate the effect that it had either. That felt very negative to say.
Well, I mean, obviously Freddie Mercury had at the time that he did the performance, he had kind of a hidden motivation, I guess.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess there's that, but still, I mean, it was a good gesture, and I think in examples like that, maybe that's not the best example, but
I think a good gesture is a good gesture regardless of your motivations for doing it.
Sure. Well, yeah, it is. But I would just say, like, for the example of, say, atheists doing good deeds versus, like a church doing a good deed. So, like, an atheist soup kitchen, I'm going to admire more than, say, a Christian soup kitchen. And that's because the atheist is just doing it for the sake of doing it, rather than, the other side, whether the people or the volunteers are there necessarily doing it. Like, the organization is obviously trying to sell you something, get you to join, that type of thing. But I get your point. Would you?
I guess I tend to view it on an individual level more than anything else.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes a little bit more sense there. Would you consider video games to be an art form?
Abso-fucking-lutely. I don't understand the concept that, like, how it couldn't be. Like, I think a lot of times when people make the argument that video games aren't art, it's because they're saying that the people playing the video game is the artist, and not the person experiencing it. I highly doubt that anybody is looking at somebody creating these giant immersive universes are saying you're not making art. Like that's art.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting. Like, I can't remember if it was on either on Facebook or if it was on Reddit, but there's this thread or this group that I've seen a number of times. That's like something to the effect of "I hate video games," and it's just a bunch of people like they're sharing memes, just talking about how gamers are essentially worthless to society. I mean, kind of the same tropes as, you know, artists like we've talked about, but it's way worse than that. Like they literally are saying, well, you're just sitting there doing jack shit. Like you're get out and go dig a fucking hole, dude, or something. I don't know.
And I don't agree with that either. And also, another cool thing about video games is, what was that Halo thing that existed way back in the day? Was it Red versus Blue? Is that what it was called?
I'm not.
It was like a comedy series that people used in.
Oh,
footage,
I know what you're talking about,
like
but I don't know what it was
stuff.
called. I don't know what it was called.
I'm pretty sure it was called Red versus Blue. But at any rate, they took an art form and then created art in a different medium using that art, and I think that's super cool. And I don't think video games get a lot of credit when it comes to that. Like you're able to create other mediums using their medium out of it.
Sure. I mean, there's
it almost creates artists in new ways.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that video games bridges a gap between a lot of traditional styles of art, and it allows the user to, so like if you go to a show, right, or to like a music venue or something like that where a band is playing or an artist is playing, you're kind of transported, and you got like the audio visual kind of experience of being there, but you're not able to do anything within that space beyond just stand there, watch, and listen. In the video game space, it takes all of that and it allows you to interact with it, even sometimes in ways that you might not expect, like if they change physics or something like that. And it makes it so like the people are, you know, like for example, Starry Night, the painting. In a video game, you could literally walk in the Starry Night. You can walk among the streets, and like Starry Night, the painting, though, all you can see is the painting, a 2D image. And it just, it makes it so that the experience is more fluid and more immersive, and you have the same capability for art.
I definitely agree with that, and I'm saying that as somebody that I don't play video games at all.
Yeah.
So I can't really relate, because it's just something like, I think that's part of my indoctrination is I grew up around people that told me that I was wasting my time playing video games, but when I was making my art, they were acting like I was doing something that was a worthwhile investment. And I think it's locked in my head somewhere.
I mean, if you think about it, many things could be said of that. I mean, do you think that people are being any more productive watching a football game or a basketball game? I mean, and I get, I'm not like hating or anything. I mean, I don't personally watch sports, but I understand why people watch sports.
I didn't say I agreed with their sentiment. I just think it's buried somewhere in my subconscious that I'm wasting my time when I personally do it. When I see other people doing it, I don't feel that way.
Yeah, I was just I was just clarifying. Just an example is that people do make that comment about gamers, but then like the same comment could be made about almost any form of entertainment. It's like, well, why the fuck do you go to that art gallery? Well, go over and start making some money, dude. You know, like, you could. It's just absurd. It's an absurd argument of, you know, people that want to kind of be nosy and think what they know is, you know, they know what it means to be a productive member of society because they bring nothing to the table, but they have the title of manager, you know? And it's just like, dude,
Right.
just because you have a title doesn't mean that you do jack shit. And that's the main point. But so a few other kind of things here to wrap us up. And who knows, this might be opening up a can of worms here. But I'm kind of curious as to your... and like I said, I know there's been a few posts on this, and I try my best to not bring up names unless it's a punch up. Like, obviously, Barack Obama or, you know, like a politician or a famous person. I don't really care about dragging them through the dirt. But the GOP and fascism. There's been a lot of political turmoil over the past 5 years, and it's still going on. How do you correlate the GOP specifically and kind of fascist style things, and kind of like giving into, to be clear to the audience here, I've got the specific definition of fascism I want to use here. So the easiest one, or the short one, is a tendency toward or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. But the longest one here, the long explanation or definition, is a political philosophy, movement, or regime, such as that of the fascisti, which, of course, that was Italy, but that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation. I feel like I'm just saying a roadmap here for a last, and forcible suppression of the opposition. Okay, that's all the definitions. What do you think?
Well, I think the problem is both sides view the other side as fascist due to different interpretations of the definition.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like I think the right wing, but I say this as a far lefter, are clearly leaning more toward fascism. But if you talk to them, they'll say, well, the whole idea of cancel culture and banning human beings is fascist in its own way. And in some way, I kind of agree with that too. I find faults in both lines of thought.
Yeah.
But I just find my issues with the right to be far more apparent and worthy of my time.
Yeah, and I think that, so the main reason for even bringing this up isn't to be like, kind of like the Leo DiCaprio meme where he's pointing at the screen or whatever. But, the reason that I bring it up is because that's what happened. Like, that's how you get past this. It's like, hey, what you did right there, that's kind of a fash. You pulled a little bit of a fash there, guy. And I'm just saying, like, unless we are able to give criticism of things that people do, like, for example, I mean, very clearly, Donald Trump is a fascist. I mean, that's...
Oh, absolutely.
Donald Trump's kids, fascists. Rudy Giuliani is a fascist. Fucking Ted Cruz is a fascist. I mean, who's another one? Jeff Sessions, motherfucking fascist. There's no way that anybody that actually has done any significant research could say otherwise. Like, they've literally, in their actions and legislation, have proven that they are fascists. And it's not the same way. Well, I'm just going to say it's not the same way as Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, both of which I'm not a big fan of. But it's not the same way as them complaining about, the way people word things, or, trying to be PC or anything like that. That yes, is stepping over some bounds, but it's not screwing the American people over, ultimately.
Yeah. I do think that it's easier for the right wing because they're always appealing to the lowest common denominator. And I know that makes me sound like a holier than thou dickhead. But
Yeah.
It's easier to appeal to stupid people if all you have to do is use buzzwords and disinformation. And to be honest with you, I think our social media platforms are the most responsible for the issues that we're in now, because everything we get is catered to us specifically. So if we already have inherent bias, it's just going to be magnified because we're not being shown anything other than our bias.
Yep.
And I don't know how to fix that.
So, I mean, that's been a problem with media in general for a long time, is it's so often used to manipulate people, because I do think that in general most people do have good intentions. Like they really have good intent. You know, when somebody...
Yes, I agree with that too.
When somebody supports a Donald Trump or a Ted Cruz, or, you know, Mr. Turtle himself, Mitch McConnell, I mean, when they go over and support these people that are just clearly not in their best interest, they do have like their best interest at thought, but what they don't realize is that they're being fed a big old load of bullshit. And they kind of, the thing that's difficult about this is that all politicians do it, and maybe this is just a larger problem, and the Republicans are just way better at it, you know, and I admit maybe they are, you know, but manipulating people is just all politics isn't anymore. It's not so much like, hey, we're trying to come up with a good system and we're trying to come up with solutions that, you know, are necessarily good for everybody. We're just trying to sell people on a fucking idea, whether they really would benefit or not.
Right. That's kind of the fault of a two-party us versus them system anyway, though, because you're always sacrificing your ideals just to have some of them accounted for. And what sucks is our politics has shifted so far right that our Democratic Party would be a conservative party in most other industrialized countries. But still, like if you talk to like even people that I respect as human beings, when they talk about the Democrats in office now, they'll call them far left socialists. It's like, what? Do you know what socialism is? Because they're not that.
No, they're corporate fucking clones. I mean, they're just... They have a different face, but they're all just clones. I mean, they're all bought off, and they're all puppeting... Yeah, I mean, they're all parroting.
Different head of the same steak.
Yeah.
Like, honestly.
And to be fair on this, I mean, I try my best in a lot of ways to be as fair as I can be. The society that we live in allows them to do it, and it's legal. So why wouldn't they do it? You know, it's in human nature to try to be as successful as you can in the society you're given. So we allow it. So, you know.
But how do you even change that, though? Especially if even if everybody collectively had the same thought about this, about corporate America buying our politics, they're still buying them, and the people making the rules are still taking the money.
So I'll tell you how to do it. And Europe has done this many, many, many times, but it's a little different for them because they had the European Union. Well, I mean, and they still have it. It's just Britain's not in it anymore. But
yeah.
But the point is like general strike. All right, guys, you don't want to pass anything, and your money and your motivation comes from corporate America. Well, we'll see how corporate America likes it when 90% of the workforce doesn't show up to work. And we just hunker down. Just like, okay, you ain't going to pass nothing, we ain't fucking working. And
that would be great.
And I'm just saying, you can get enough people to do it.
It's a nice concept. It's a nice concept, but when you have half of the people in this country already voting against their interests and finding so much pride in getting screwed over every day of their lives.
Yeah.
I have a hard time believing that you're ever going to convince them to not go do the thing that gives them the most amount of pride.
I guess the first step would be to fix the media problem. And once you fix the media problem, then maybe you could start building trust and ultimately change can happen. But for right now, you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter. I went over and shared, actually, it makes me think of a recent, well, it wasn't a YouTube, it was a Facebook interaction where somebody posted this copy pasta of all these different gripes about, the vaccine. And I can't remember which specific one it was. I think they were just bitching about all of the COVID vaccines. And essentially it was like, if I get this, will I no longer have to wear a mask? And then it says government says no. And then if I do this, will I be able to visit my family? Government says no, et cetera, et cetera. It was like 12 or 15 of them. And I messaged the person. I said, I mean, do you really want somebody to answer all of these? Or are you just not going to have your mind changed no matter what anybody says? Because I don't want to change or essentially waste my time. And another person commented and said, I would really honestly like to hear some answers or whatever. So I took the time to answer all of them. And I used sources, right? Because that's just trying
how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just how you do proper research. And then somebody could say, instead of having the conversation of, well, where'd you get your information? It's like, it's right there. Just click on it. And one of the main sources I used, in fact, the main source I used, among others, was Mayo Clinic. And this person.
So let me guess. It was an invalid source, right?
So it's an invalid source because it's both big pharma and government propaganda. Because they said, well, where do they get their money from? And I gave them a website that shows, because they're a nonprofit. I mean, they have to show their income. But anyway, it's all like, oh man, 40% of it comes from big government and the others from other sources. And I'm just like, well, hold on. What does their funding have anything to do with this? Them being right or wrong? I mean, you have to prove. So like if they're saying, right, and this is kind of like a good lesson and maybe, a way to kind of like get to the end here. But if you use a source and then somebody says, well, that's big pharma or that's big government, the onus is on them now. They've made the statement to say this is big pharma and this is big government. The onus is on them to say, first of all, why does that fucking matter? First of all. And second of all, if whatever that is that matters, whatever their explanation is, like they're corrupt, or they then have to prove that that's corrupt. Otherwise, why'd you even bring it up? And going over and doing laugh emojis on it and just doing like GIFs with rolling your eyes or anything like that doesn't help the conversation. But that's all I ever get is like, hey, you said, it's almost like I'm Mari, is all like, you said that the Mayo Clinic, one of the most respected fucking medical organizations in the United States and probably worldwide. They might actually be worldwide, but one of the most respected medical communities is government propaganda and or pharma propaganda. And where's your evidence for this? And they come up with nothing, and it's all like, well, you coming up with nothing determined that was a fucking lie. You have no idea what you're talking about. I mean,
well, I mean, man, they have, like, those same people have problems with fact-checking systems and stuff. Like, they don't want facts. They just want their bias to be reinforced.
I actually am strangely amused by those people. There's a certain woman on my Facebook, and of course I don't like to say names, but she, dead serious, will actively try to find something that's not true and then post it. And then after the little fact check thing below that pops up, other people who are anti-fact check will then take a screenshot and then post it as a comment that it's fact check. And then they literally just like bitch and complain in like 10 to 15 comments about how their freedom of speech is being violated. And they're like essentially just yelling at a robot. It's just like, I just imagine a bunch of people just like a robot's walking down the street and they just walk up and just start going, ah!
You fucking commie. I also don't understand the point of that anyway, because your free speech would be violated if you weren't allowed to say the stupid shit you're saying.
Yeah.
They're just letting you know that the stupid shit you're saying is stupid shit.
It's absurd, but that is the world that we currently live in. I don't know. Well, we've talked about a lot. Do you have any final thoughts?
Nah, man, I've enjoyed this conversation. It made me miss you living around these parts. It was fun hanging out with you.
Yeah, likewise. I think that, of course, I ain't no Sam Harris or Joe Rogan, so I'm sure we'll have to try to plan some other conversations. This one was kind of like I wanted to really showcase you, and I know that you've got plenty of a following, but I mean, I personally think that to answer a question there for myself, I would say, and we've had long conversations in the past, maybe not recently, but you know, what artists have had influence on how you approach your work, and I think you're one of them, man. Like, I kind of...
Well, thanks, man. That actually means a lot to me, dude.
Yeah, I reached out to you and your brother, of course, you know, for other reasons, partying being one of them. But the other reason was just because I gravitate towards people that are innovative and creative. And I think that you're both things. And I think that you got some good stuff going on. So don't sell yourself short.
Well, thanks, man. That's definitely a problem I have. But I really do appreciate that. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, no problem. But anyway, that is all for now. We'll have to schedule maybe something some other time. Maybe bring up some more subjects, do some other things. But for now,
that'll be fun.
For now, that's it. And for the audience, real quick, if this is content that you like, please hit that subscribe button if you're watching me on YouTube, and like and share if you're on Facebook. And thanks everybody for watching.
Bye, everybody.